Chances are you've probably already heard DJI drones being totally out of stock in retailers, on Amazon, local online websites, and even the DJI store itself. If you go on a store, you're gonna see that pretty much any drone is not for sale or out of stock in the United States of America. So here's a little bit of context of why this is happening, what to expect next, and what to do about it. My name is Kai, and aside from making content, I work in video production specifically with FPV and drones. You can imagine this will also have an impact on me. So I'm going to be sharing some of my thoughts about how to pivot as a creator, production specialist, or anyone who uses a drone that is DJI. So over the last couple of days, my team and I have been researching in order to give you this Cliff Notes version of what's happening. I also assumed initially that it was the tariffs that the Trump administration was imposing upon China and other countries that was causing this supply issue from DJI. But it's actually not. There's actually a couple other things besides the tariffs that are affecting and threatening DJI being in the US right now. And one of them, which is the most urgent, which is stopping the supply of DJI drones, action cameras, and other products into the US right now, it's actually a Customs and Border Patrol issue. CBP is citing the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act as the reason that drones can't be brought into the US. And while DJI has continued to maintain that this is not the case, the CBP has continued to stop shipments. So the reason we're seeing out of stock and unavailable everywhere currently is not because some bill has been passed or because of some tariff. It's currently just because the US CBP is making the supply of these drones super unpredictable. And so as a countermeasure, it seems like DJI has stopped the supply of drones and products to the US for the time being. And although there's no official confirmation of when these drones will be restocked in the US, MadsTech has some hearsay information that they might come back in late July or August. So obviously, fingers crossed that is the case. But that is not the only thing that we unfortunately have to worry about in terms of DJI's future in the States. Because before this issue even happened, members of the US government have been actively trying to ban and stop the sale of DJI drones for multiple reasons. One, which they claim publicly, is a threat to national security. Just like how they were making these claims on TikTok, of TikTok being a threat to national security. It's a very similar story with drones. Last year in 2024, the House of Representatives passed the Countering CCP Drones Act. And this was a bill that got signed off by the House and sent to the Senate, trying to add DJI to the covered list of the FCC, which basically meant that any future releases of DJI drones would be banned in the US. Now, this bill passed the House, but it got countered in the Senate. And so this bill didn't end up going through. However, the fight is not over, because in 2025, the National Defense Authorization Act now has Section 1709, which mandates investigations into Chinese drone makers, including DJI, with the goal of potentially adding them to FCC's covered list. Once again, trying to ban any future releases of DJI's drone products. DJI, by the way, has once again stated its total compliance in being audited. In fact, it's inviting it so that it can continue to sell drones in the US. The problem is that no agency in the US has taken up the reins to conduct this audit. And there is a clause in the act that says if within 1 year, no agency undertakes this assessment, DJI could be automatically added to the FCC's cover list, effectively banning their products without a formal review. So basically, in order for DJI products to be banned, the government just has to do nothing. No due process, no fair review. It just happens. Unfortunately, not great news for anyone who currently relies on DJI products to run their businesses and their operations. This doesn't just include content creators and productions, but this includes farmers, this includes law enforcement, this includes inspectors. In fact, any US business that benefits from high-tech drones is going to take a hit from this. And yes, being concerned about security is one thing, but when the company that is at fault is being compliant and open, then is the right response really just to ignore the attempts being made, and as a result, subject the American people to a negative economic and operational impact? And to be honest, no matter how complicit DJI continues to be in these searches, there seems to be an alternate agenda here. There is another order that Trump actually has signed regarding manufactured drones in China. One of the orders is Unleashing American Drone Dominance. That is literally the name of the order. Federal agencies to prioritize US manufactured UAS over foreign made alternatives to the maximum extent permitted by law. So that's cool and all, but the only issue is DJI kind of poops on everybody else in terms of drones. This is not even just personal. This is not an American thing. just in general, DJI just dominates the global market by like something like 80 something percent, including the US. The number is definitely a majority of drones being used in the US still being mostly DJI. Now, there are good parts to this bill, like operating beyond visual line of sight and other advancements in US drone application. However, the NDAA would basically cancel out any productivity, because if DJI isn't part of the mix, then that means we are dealing with drones that are 2 to 4 years behind in advancement. Essentially, it would just set the US back in terms of drone application and technology by like 2 to 4 years. Okay, so beyond all of this doom and gloom, what are the silver linings here? So the first thing is this issue is only currently happening in the United States, which means almost every other country is still able to access DJI stock. That includes Canada, that includes Mexico, or anything else in the proximity of America. DJI drones aren't currently illegal, they just aren't being sold to the US right now. So if you really want a DJI product, the import option is always there. I got affected by this too. I was actually flying for a job with my Avata 2, crashed it on the job unfortunately, and when I wanted to buy a replacement for a job I had coming up, I couldn't find stock anywhere. And so this was divine timing, but I actually had to go to China for a job. And when I did, I went to a DJI store there. By the way, those DJI stores are awesome. I don't know why we don't have them in the US. Actually, I do know why we don't have them in the US, but they feel like Apple stores. The experience is awesome, and I was able to just buy an Avata off the shelf at a mall. And you'll be pleased to know that despite it being sold from China, the Avata, once it syncs to my goggles and remote, basically just became a carbon copy of my first Avata that is now, unfortunately, kind of dead until I can repair it. Rest in peace. Okay, but despite this current issue, what about the impending ban on DJI drones? There's a couple things we can still do to fight this. One is to contact your local representative. And as meaningless as it feels, to be honest, I also felt like this was pretty meaningless. Like, what is one voice gonna do? But in 2024, when the Countering CCP Drones Act was trying to be passed and it got countered by the Senate, DJI did release this statement. By sharing personal stories and highlighting the potential negative impacts of a ban, enthusiasts and professionals played a pivotal role in influencing the legislative outcome. And quote by DJI, "Your support made a real difference. Congressional offices paid attention and listened to what you had to say. Your voice still matters, and we will continue to work to ensure you have access to the innovative tools you rely on." If we continue to make enough noise, as creators of platforms and individuals alike, just writing to our local congressman, then it just really takes the right person to hear it. Like, imagine if you were just talking about this at a cafe and the person who has a role in the audits for national security happened to be there. Like, hypothetically, right? Not gonna say this happened, but it could. And I used to not know where to start because the idea of calling a senator or congressman sounds just outlandish, right? Like, I have anxiety, so I don't like to call people I don't know. But the good news is UAVCoach has also created a URL that makes it really easy with a template of your messaging and whatnot and who to send it to. You can send it out straight from the website. I'll link it in the description below. If you fill that form out and send it, that is just another vote to add. But let's say that unfortunately this doesn't work and in the end the NDAA passes, marking DJI as covered on the FCC list. If that's the case, then any future releases of DJI drones beyond the point of that bill being passed are now restricted and banned from the United States of America. So now, in my brain, this leaves us with two main options. One, leave the country. There's multiple reasons to do that right now, just to be honest, but probably not going to do that. Too much work. Option two is we work around it. This act, it is supposed to ban the use of any future DJI drones. So that means any products that were released ahead of time, at least as of now, should still be valid and usable in the United States. In terms of stock, I have no idea what that's going to look like, but at least we would be able to still have the import and export option, and anything at this point in time, including the Mavic Pro, could still be purchased and used. If that's the case, then we pretty much just have to hold out with the current technology available to us until America or other countries can catch up with DJI, at least somewhat. With that being said, it becomes very reminiscent of what drones and FPV was like before DJI entered the market. Very DIY, build it yourself. This is kind of like how it was when I first started in 2019. DJI had just entered the market with their digital FPV system, but right before that, everybody pretty much used analog and got the job done. Now, I don't know how optimistic I can be about our technology going backwards, or at least getting frozen, but What I will say is that the technology that DJI has been introducing has made work and life a lot easier for operators. I can say this from firsthand experience. It's why I love the Avata 2 so much for FPV. However, for those who can't hang, for those who are not able to operate or continue to innovate with the changes, including losing a lot of these tools, that will also mean an eventual decrease in supply for these service providers. And I feel like the people who do continue to adapt and innovate and learn in order to continue to keep their business running are going to be the ones who are able to make the most of the situation. And if you want to look at it one way, they're going to be able to have a bigger piece of the pie. So if you feel like you have the fire on you to continue learning, growing, and building despite having DJI drones, then that might actually be good news for you. Because if you manage to persist, those who can't hang without a DJI drone might just drop and you will rise above the competition. I would take this time to also reflect on the role that drones play in your business and also what else you can do to continue to stand out and rise despite these roadblocks. Jeven Dovey made a really great video covering a lot of what I did today, and he left some of his thoughts about what this could mean for the future of content creators and creatives. He talked about how if we're basing our channels or our subject matter on a topic, if at any point that topic becomes irrelevant due to a certain legislation or because of AI, then that could pretty much mean the end of your career. And in order to not be replaced or wiped out, what are some things we can do to remain ahead of the curve? And honestly, when I think of AI and bans and drones and whatnot, it really just comes down to you as a creator. Being able to build the kind of content and create the kind of content that isn't just around a topic, but more about a mission. Not so much about I fly drones, but this is why this is important to me. Drones are an extension of that, but there's more to this. In fact, the whole reason I wanted to do this in the first place, fly drones, make content, because I so strongly admired these people online making this compelling, authentic, honest content that I could just watch and feel connected and learn something new. Being an only child, this felt like the best thing ever to me. I didn't have many people to talk to while I was alone, so learning from the internet was the best. And so I wanted with all my heart to become someone who could do this too. And that is my mission, is to be that person for other people, to give creators the resources they need to unlock their best life and to feel the most fulfilled. So this might just be some sort of sign for many of us that we can start to move in that direction. But am I going to go down without a fight first? No. I'm not going to let some representative who probably has never touched a drone before pull it out of all the hands of the American people, basically restricting us of some of the best technology out there. Drones and FPV have changed my life, and DJI has empowered me with the tools necessary every step of the way. And I know the same is true for so many of you out there. So if you want to keep your rights to rip it, take 2 minutes to fill out the form below, send it off to your local representative, and continue to make some noise. This has been Kai, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace!